Welcome to my channel, HFY Humanity. Let's begin.
Narrated from the perspective of Grul Vathan, Senior Intelligence Analyst, Zorvathi High Command. I want to be very clear about something. When the Zorvathi Galactic Empire decided to execute a human girl on live broadcast, every single one of us in the intelligence division thought it was a magnificent idea. Brilliant even. We applauded. We actually applauded. I would like to formally apologize to my own brain for that. Her name was Mira Solon, 19 years old, captured 6 weeks earlier on the agricultural colony of Denvash 4, a muddy little rock the humans had been quietly farming for 3 decades. She was not a soldier. She was not a rebel commander. She was not in any traditional sense a threat. She was a girl who had thrown a wrench, literally a wrench, at one of our patrol drones, and somehow taken its optical sensor offline. That was it. That was her crime. But Emperor Vorak III needed a symbol. He needed the galaxy to watch something and feel something, and then stop feeling things and simply obey. The Empire had been dealing with human resistance cells for 11 years, small, irritating, impossible to fully crush, like trying to sweep sand off a stone floor in a windstorm. Vorak was tired of the sand, so the execution was scheduled. It too was broadcast on every Imperial frequency across 42 star systems. The propaganda team titled it, "A Message to Those Who Resist." The production value was, I must admit, extraordinary. The chamber was enormous. The lighting was theatrical. There were 17 cameras, each feeding a different angle to a different audience segment. The Zorvathi High Council sat in elevated seats like guests at a sporting event. They wore their formal robes. Some of them brought food. I watched from my station in the analysis wing. Around me, 43 analysts sat at their consoles, monitoring reaction feeds from across the Empire. We were measuring fear metrics, compliance indicators, loyalty projections. Our models predicted that the execution would generate a galaxy-wide suppression effect lasting approximately 14 months. The numbers were very good. Mira Solon was brought in at exactly the 9th standard hour. I will tell you what I noticed, and I will tell you why none of us understood what we were noticing. She was not shaking. Now humans shake. We know this. It is a biological response tied to their threat processing system, an involuntary cascade of neurochemical signals that produces visible tremors in the extremities. We had cataloged it extensively. Nearly every human prisoner we had ever processed had demonstrated some degree of it. It was, frankly, one of the data points we used to confirm successful psychological suppression. Mira Solon walked into that chamber the way someone walks into a room they have already decided belongs to them. Her hands were bound behind her back. Her face had a bruise along the left jaw from the initial capture. Her hair was tangled. Her uniform was torn. And she was, without any question, looking at every camera, not glancing, not flinching, looking directly, with the specific expression of someone who has finished making a decision and is now simply waiting for the rest of the world to catch up. One of my colleagues, Analyst Priveth, leaned over and said, "She is performing bravery, psychological conditioning from their resistance training, ignore it." I said nothing. I was watching the reaction feeds. Human signals across 42 systems had spiked. Not in fear, in attention. Every monitoring node we had embedded in human population centers was registering the same pattern, the equivalent of an entire species leaning forward in their seat at the same moment. The execution protocol began. The presiding officer, High Warden Solk, read the charges in the Imperial tongue. Mira Solon watched him the entire time. When he finished, she said something. She said it in the human language called Standard, which approximately 60% of our analyst team understood. The translation came to me 0.4 seconds later from our automated system. She said, "You have exactly 47 minutes. High Warden Solk paused. He actually paused. A man who had presided over 912 executions paused because a 19-year-old with bound hands had spoken 4 words. He asked, through the translator, 47 minutes until what? And Mira Solon smiled. not the smile of someone who is afraid and pretending otherwise. The smile of someone who already knows the punchline and is generously waiting for everyone else to hear the joke. She said nothing more. The execution proceeded. At the 9th hour and 8 minutes, Mira Solon was gone. At the 9th hour and 55 minutes, which is to say 47 minutes later, to the second, every communications relay in the Zorvathi Galactic Empire went dark simultaneously. And I will tell you something. We had not seen a single thing coming. When 42 relay stations go dark at the same moment, there is a very specific sound that fills an intelligence operations wing. It is the sound of silence, followed immediately by the sound of every analyst in the room trying to speak at the same time, followed by the sound of senior officers shouting at junior officers, followed by the sound of junior officers discovering that their consoles are no longer receiving anything from anywhere. It is not a pleasant sound. I sat very still. I am not proud of this. I sat very still, and I stared at my screen, which was showing me a flat line where 42 live data feeds used to be. And I thought about those 4 words. 47 minutes. She had not said 47 minutes until we fight back. She had not said 47 minutes until the resistance strikes. She had said 47 minutes until, and then stopped, because she did not need to finish the sentence. Because the end of that sentence was not a military operation, it was a timer, and someone had already said it before she ever walked into that chamber. The communications blackout lasted 9 minutes. When the relays came back online, they came back wrong. Every Imperial broadcast frequency, every propaganda channel, every official state transmission across 42 star systems was now carrying a single piece of footage. Not a declaration of war, not a resistance manifesto, not a threatening message from some masked rebel commander speaking in dramatic tones about freedom and sacrifice. It was the execution broadcast, replaying, but edited. Whoever had done it had taken the original footage, our 17 camera, theatrically lit, professionally produced symbol of Imperial dominance, and had simply added one thing to it: a countdown. In the corner of every frame from the moment Mira Solon was brought into that chamber, a small timer ran. And when she spoke her 4 words, the timer was at 47 minutes exactly. And it counted down through the entire execution, all the way to 0. And then the feeds cut to something else. I want to describe what happened next carefully because I was watching it in real time and I still had trouble processing it at normal speed. Across every human population center in the Empire simultaneously, the resistance moved, not in a chaotic, desperate, everybody charge manner. In a manner so coordinated it looked choreographed. Fuel depots on 9 worlds went offline using access codes that should have been changed months earlier and somehow were not. 3 Imperial shipyards in the outer rings reported catastrophic pressure failures in their docking systems. Failures that our engineers would later determine had been engineered over a period of approximately 4 years through incremental, undetectable maintenance. Sabotage. 7 high-ranking Imperial governors received personal messages on their private encrypted channels. Messages that contained, in specific detail, records of every conversation those governors had ever had that they believed were private. The governors, to a one, stopped returning calls from the capital. High Warden Sulk, the man who had presided over the execution, was found sitting in his office 4 hours later, completely unharmed, staring at a data chip that had been placed on his desk sometime during the blackout. No one had seen anyone enter. No one had seen anyone leave. The chip contained a single file. It was a list of names, every Imperial informant embedded in every human resistance cell across the Empire. Every single name. Do you understand what that means? That means the resistance had known about every informant, possibly for years, and had simply chosen not to act on that information. Had chosen instead to feed those informants carefully selected misinformation. Had chosen to let the Empire believe its intelligence network was intact and functioning, right up until the moment it was more useful to prove that it was not. Mira Solon had not been a random girl with a wrench. I went back through her file after everything collapsed. really went through it, past the surface-level capture report, past the preliminary interrogation notes. She had been on Denvash 4 for 8 months before her capture. Her cover was agricultural labor. What she had actually been doing during those 8 months, according to the resistance communications we decrypted 6 weeks too late, was coordinating the final synchronization of 11 separate operation timelines across 9 star systems. The wrench had been deliberate. She had thrown the wrench at that drone because she needed to be captured, because she needed to be inside an Imperial facility, because she needed to be on that broadcast, because that broadcast was the signal. The moment the Empire put her face on every screen in 42 star systems, she became the most effective communications relay the Resistance had ever had, and the Empire had built the entire transmission tower themselves, paid for it, aimed it, and turned it on. The Emperor, the Council, the 17 cameras, all of it, delivered to every human being watching, at the same moment, the confirmation that the plan was running. 47 minutes. The Zorvathi Galactic Empire did not fall in a single dramatic explosion. Empires rarely do. It fell the way a building falls when someone has been quietly removing the supports for years. Slowly, then all at once, then in pieces that kept landing for a very long time. The official dissolution was declared 11 months later. By then, 36 of the 42 systems had already stopped paying Imperial taxes, stopped enforcing Imperial law, stopped answering Imperial transmissions. We in the Intelligence Division wrote a very thorough post-analysis report. It was 412 pages long. The conclusion, which I authored personally, was 3 sentences. We underestimated them. We had been underestimating them for 11 years. The girl with the wrench was not the beginning of this. She was the end of us. I keep thinking about High Warden Solk's pause, that 0.3 second gap between the end of her 4 words and his question. In that pause, something happened that no Imperial protocol had ever prepared any of us for. A man with absolute authority in that room, in that moment, felt something flicker. A small, cold uncertainty. He buried it immediately. He proceeded. He did exactly what the Empire trained him to do, and that was the last thing the Empire ever successfully accomplished. I do not know where Mira Solin's name sits in human historical records. I imagine well. I imagine there are statues. I imagine children learn her name before they learn much else. I imagine that in whatever schools humans build on the worlds they reclaimed, someone somewhere teaches the lesson of the 47 minutes and what it actually meant. It meant we were never the ones in control of that room. Not for a single second. End of story.